The Full Circle Podcast. Compelling interviews and incredible tales from Colorado's western slope, from the mountains to the desert. Christi, Reece, and her team hear from the movers, shakers, and characters of the Grand Valley and surrounding mountain towns that make the western slope the place we all love. You'll learn, you'll laugh, you'll love with The Full Circle. Welcome to the Real Estate Deep Dive segment of the Full Circle Podcast. I'm Shelly Cross, realtor with the Christi Reece Group, and today we have Jennifer Brownell from Land Title Guarantee Company. Hi, Jennifer.
Hi, Shelly. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming. Today we're going to talk about title insurance. What is title insurance all about, and why do people need it? So, Jennifer, you've been with Land Title and in the title industry for how many years now?
Well, just about 30,
Wow.
and they've all been with Land Title. It's an amazing company, so I've been grateful to be with them the whole time.
And it's a Colorado company, correct?
It is. We are only based in Colorado, and we have local ownership here in Colorado, so big company feel, but family owned.
Good. I've worked with you for over 20 years now, and I really appreciate all that Land Title does to help me get closings, getting through closings, knowing that we're not going to have issues after the closing. So thank you for that. We're going to do a little bit of a deep dive into what it's all about. What does it mean to get title insurance? Why do people need it? We're going to talk a little bit about contract to closing in a real estate transaction and what the title company's role is in that. So why don't we go ahead and get started? I'll just say the first thing I want to say, that title insurance is the unsexy part of real estate.
Now, what do you mean unsexy? I'll have some stories at the end, and maybe they'll decide how sexy or unsexy title insurance really is. But
Perfect.
We'll go with that for now.
Okay, that sounds good. Well, Jennifer, let's just jump right in. So why do people need title insurance? Why do buyers need title insurance?
Well, so let's talk first about insurance in general and the difference between title insurance and insurance that consumers are a lot more familiar with, which is car insurance or homeowners insurance. So car and homeowners insurance obviously protect consumers against future risk, a future accident, or a future fire at a home. Where title insurance, we're covering and looking at what happened in the past. Think of us like the DNA test, if you will, for a property. We want to check and find any defects that might be associated with the property from the past. And not only do we check for that, but we also offer that insurance policy that they would be able to file a claim against later if something comes up.
Right. So title insurance is strictly for real estate, right?
Yes. So real property.
Property.
Meaning if you have a mobile home that you do not own the land and it's in a rented mobile home park, we do not insure properties like that. It is only real property transactions, but it could be commercial, a big commercial building. It could be vacant land, a residential property. So we do insure a lot of different types of properties.
Okay. So there's a lot more to what you do as a title company. It's not just about the title insurance. It's about getting through a closing and helping the people that are both buying and selling a home, making sure the title is clear before the property closes. And there's a lot of steps along the way. Do we want to talk about that a little bit? So when you get a contract from a real estate agent, tell us what happens inside the office.
Yeah, so the first thing is we open up our search and we take a look at the public record for that specific property. We're looking at what was against the property recorded. As far as, most sellers have a loan that needs to be paid off. There's often a homeowners association that the property is in, so we want to make sure those are all current. Maybe the seller has unpaid taxes or a child support judgment. So we're looking for all of those items when we do a search for the property. And then we produce what we call the title commitment. So that's where we're saying, here is the insurance product that we're willing to offer you once these things happen. And that's kind of what happens during the closing process, is that checklist is completed. Mm-hmm. And then there's also things we tell you that we are not willing to insure, and we tell you that right up front. So I think that's one of the most important things consumers need to know, is that when they're looking at this title commitment report that they get, it goes to both buyer and seller. It's a lot more applicable to the buyer because it is their policy of insurance. Mm-hmm. Even though the seller often pays for it, it does belong to the buyer.
Right.
We're not privy to what they do want to use the land for.
Right.
RV parking is a great example. We live in an area that we have a lot of outdoor activities available to people, so they want a place to store their toys. And there are some properties, quite a few properties in Mesa County that you can have RV parking, but there are some that you cannot, or there are pretty severe restrictions on what that looks like.
Right.
So covenants are what's part of those exceptions. And so it's important for buyers to take a look and read those documents and seek counsel if they don't understand them, so that they know what they can and can't do with the property.
Right. Yeah. So the title commitment is your commitment to ensure the title policy after closing. And it's a very important part of a real estate transaction. It's one of the first steps that we go through. And the buyer has the opportunity to review that and discuss with their realtor anything they might have concerns with. It's also going to tell us if we need a survey, right?
Correct.
Because a lot of our title policies we're asking for include boundary line coverage, survey coverage. So sometimes you guys require that survey or the improvement location certificate. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So there are different types of surveys, and I think people get a little nervous when they see a survey requirement on a title commitment. But if you are a buyer buying especially a larger piece of land or a property that is not in an established subdivision, that's when it's really a good piece of information to have. What are the boundary lines? Is there a fence that has existed for years, but the neighbor improperly placed that, and it's been on this property that you're potentially going to buy, and they might have rights of adverse possession and be able to actually take some of the property because their fence has been there and existed for a certain amount of time. So surveys are important, and we have some really good surveyors in Mesa County, and there's some reasonable pricing to get a survey. So even if a seller doesn't want to provide it, I think it's good for a buyer to just say, this is information and my due diligence to get a survey.
Right. I like to tell them it's kind of a map of the title commitment. It's going to show you a visual of the property kind of from above and where all your easements are and where your fence lines are. And title company won't insure on fence lines. We know that. So it's a good picture for them to have, just so they know where everything is on the property and that they're not encroaching on a neighbor.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So Jennifer, what does a title search actually involve?
Yeah, so all documents that involve properties from the beginning of when the government first started deeding land to homeowners involved a transfer deed, or back in the day it used to be called a patent. And so we sometimes go all the way back to patent in our search, not always, but we look back at the ownership records that have been made public, and we make sure that there's no fraudulent transfers or no errors in legal descriptions or errors in names. And we just make sure that the transfer of the property and everything that was recorded that affects the property is part of that title commitment report that we give to the buyer. So it gives them a clear picture of that property and its history.
So is that called the chain of title?
That's correct. Chain of title.
Okay.
And so we use the public records to pull all of those documents and provide those to the buyer and the seller. And then once the parties have a chance to review that, they can then object and say to the seller if there is something about the title to the property that's not acceptable to them. That's kind of their first opportunity to get out of a contract if the purchase of that property isn't right for them.
Right. Right. That's very important for buyers to review those and understand what their rights and responsibilities are as far as the title commitment goes. And let's talk about the agent's role in that a little bit. You have a buyer's agent that's presenting that document to the buyer. We're limited in advice we can give in areas that we're not the expert in, which is title. So in presenting that document to the buyers, I think it's important they understand what that document is doing for them, and what those exceptions mean as far as potential, claims or title issues that could arise after closing. So I think it's important for the agent to, a lot of agents don't really know what to do with that, but just to present that document in a way that they understand what they should be looking for, and that if they have any questions, that they should contact the title company.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that, you're an expert in real estate. I certainly am not. And I wouldn't expect real estate agents to know everything there is to know about title. after 30 years, I'm surprised on some of the things that come up against title that I've never run into before. So I couldn't expect a real estate agent, especially, somebody who's maybe a little newer to the game, to be able to read and understand everything that's happening as part of that title commitment. But your title company should. And Land Title has some very experienced escrow officers and title officers. So refer your clients back to us, and we'll be happy to answer the questions that we can for them.
That's great. Yeah. I mean, as long as we've both been in the business, it's amazing how we learn something new every day.
Yeah. That's kind of the fun of it. So that's, more point that occasionally it can be sexy.
Oh, I love it. Well, let's move on from there. So we get through the title commitment. We have other steps in the closing process that happen. Tell us a little more about what you do as far as checking with HOAs, homeowners associations, and getting payoffs. And what are some of the steps that happen now as we prepare to get closer to closing?
Yes, the first communication, we're gonna reach out to both buyer and seller because we want to give them some basic fraud alerts. There's a lot of fraud in real estate right now, and so we want to make sure they know what those red flags are. So we reach out right away and communicate with the buyer how to get their earnest money to us, how to do that safely if they're going to wire their money in. Then we reach out to the seller and make sure that we have all the information that we would need to complete the transaction. So we look for what payoffs do you have, and of course those do show up in the title commitment. But occasionally sellers will forget that they took out a home equity line of credit and maybe they've never drawn against it, but it's still a lien that's out there that needs to be resolved and closed out with that lender. There might be, like I mentioned, judgments that the seller has that they didn't realize. Any judgment that comes against you individually will attach to the property. Or anybody that you add to title later, so you get married and you add your new spouse to title, whatever judgments they have or tax responsibilities that they have out there, those will also attach to the property. So some of those items can be kind of a surprise to the seller when they get the commitment. So it's our job to kind of work through all of that with the parties and make sure that they, provide us with all of that information to clear title.
Okay. Now, I've seen in title commitments judgments that come up on buyers. Is that kind of driven by the lender, or do you always check buyers?
We do always check buyers, but it is the lender that dictates, us providing that information, because as soon as a buyer buys a property, any judgment of that nature attaches to the property. And we've committed to the lender, their new lender, the person giving that buyer the loan, that we're going to give them first lien position, first foreclosure opportunity if that buyer defaults. So it's important that the lender know if a buyer has, especially a particularly high judgment that's going to attach to the property.
Right. So some other things we see, let's talk about some other defects that can come up. We see unreleased liens that have actually been paid off and not released.
Correct. So oftentimes, like I mentioned, sometimes it's I forgot I took out a line of credit or I haven't drawn any money on it. But other times it's a prior owner. So a loan gets paid off through a closing, and now that buyer's turning around to sell the property, and that lien from the previous seller never got released by their lender. Lenders sell loans, as we all know. Our mortgage, we're paying one mortgage company and then it gets sold to somebody else. So because those change over time, lenders do sometimes they don't fulfill that obligation of releasing their lien from the property when the loan's paid off. So even if it's a prior owner, we'll need the seller's help to work through that. And usually we can contact, especially if it was done through a different title company, then we can reach out and work through that prior title company to get what we call an indemnification to remove that as an item from the title commitment.
Okay, so we've talked about different people having roles in this, the title company, of course, the buyer, the agent, but there's also a seller involved. And Jennifer, what can a seller do before listing their home to avoid problems? Is there anything they can do before even going on the market that can help ensure that they have a smooth process?
Yes, actually, we are offering what's called a pre-listing commitment, basically. So if you have any concerns, it's a really good idea to ask your agent to order a pre-listing commitment from the title company. I'm not sure if all title companies offer it, but they can provide some information up front. There's something called an ownership and encumbrance report that is a really inexpensive product that's separate from the title commitment, but a seller really should know what is going to show up on this commitment. They might, of course, remember they have a mortgage because they're paying that monthly. They may or may not remember the line of credit that they have against the property. But the surprise prior owner deed that we talked about, that's something that's really good to find out in advance because that can take some time to clear up. And if you got a cash offer and the buyer wanted to close in a couple of weeks, that could delay the closing. So if a seller, can order a pre-listing commitment to find out exactly what the title is going to look like, they're also able to provide that to a potential buyer so that if a buyer does have a specific use and interest in that land, they can already determine before they make an official offer whether that's going to work for them. So it would just make things much smoother and speed up the process.
Okay. I do, when I do, as a realtor, when I go to listing appointments, I like to do the ownership encumbrance report and take that with me. And I think it just shows people that not only am I doing a preliminary search for them, but it gives them peace of mind that they don't have any unexpected liens.
Yes, that's great. And it's, again, it's really inexpensive and it comes out in 24 hours. So it's a great product. And I think all agents should do it.
Right. I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. So we're getting through our contract process and we're getting ready to close. What are the things you're doing internally to prepare and get buyer and seller to the closing table together?
Yeah, so I kind of think of us as like the air traffic controllers of the transaction. There are so many people, and so we're taking our instructions from the contract and any amendments. We're ordering in all of the information that we've talked about, the payoff, the HOA. We order final water and sewer. Any item that comes up on title that we need to clear, we're working on those things. We're also working with your new lender, the buyer's lender, to make sure that we get all of the numbers and the fees that are associated with that loan. And we're balancing so that we have a final statement of all the costs involved for the buyer. So we're preparing that. And we're getting all the documents on the lender's side that the buyer's going to need to sign. We're also verifying where's everybody going to be. So, do we have people coming to the closing and are they available, on the same day? Do we need to set up separate closings? Does everybody have a valid ID and driver's license? So it's kind of the panic at closing when, somebody lays down their driver's license and it's expired. So we have a new process for that too. We, like so many other companies, we have a portal that we are asking people to upload their IDs into even prior to closing. So we can verify and let them know if, hey, your driver's license expired, we're going to need a new one before closing. So just, again, allows that extra time to prepare for those unexpected things that we've seen over the years. But that's really, a big part of it. We're just kind of bringing everybody together and making sure all the pieces are in place. So a lot of communication.
Yes.
Making sure everybody's on the same page.
I'm sure you have some great closing table stories you're going to share with us.
Yes, that's the sexy part.
That's
Shelly,
the sexy part.
We'll get there.
Okay, sounds good. So let's talk about Colorado-specific title issues. I know water rights are huge in Colorado. What's your level of involvement as far as like water rights, mineral rights? They're just various Colorado specifics.
Yeah, I think it's really important for parties to know that we don't insure either. We don't insure water or mineral rights. We do, however, facilitate the transfer of water rights, and we want to make sure that we know in advance what water rights the seller has. Sometimes that is a separate deed of adjudicated water, we call it, and sometimes it runs with the land. Mm-hmm. Sometimes there's a stock certificate and a transfer of the stock certificate that's required. So the contract provides for that section, and oftentimes people, I find, they don't give the proper instructions in that section. It's important to ask the seller, what water rights do you have? Do you pay any bill for water outside of your domestic water? And those need to be captured up front.
Well, they should be in the purchase contract. They should be correct in the purchase contract. If they're not, then they should be amended.
Sometimes we see things like those that run with the land. Mm-hmm. Well, what are those? We don't automatically know. Sometimes we know the area where, again, we're very familiar with Mesa County as the people that work for land title and as many years as we've been doing it, but that's not the case everywhere. So it is important to, especially as a buyer, to ask those questions if they, they need to ask the seller so that can be written properly into the contract.
Right.
And then we make sure that those are transferred through the closing, whatever assessments are paid, whatever fees for transfer are collected. But as a buyer, I would verify after closing that that process happened correctly. Water rights are a big deal, like you said, and having a water share, so Grand Valley Irrigation water shares, those can be anywhere from $1,000 to even $5,000 a share, depending on what they're going for at the time.
Right.
So it's a big deal.
And those don't automatically transfer with the land.
They do not.
Not
You
always.
can retain those and own the land or own the water shares separately
Right.
from the land. So those are ones we're very cautious about.
Right.
And then mineral rights, like you mentioned, if you are really buying a piece of property that you think may have mineral rights, the only way you're really going to know is if you hired a mineral rights attorney and did a formal search separately. We're going to list if a deed has specifically excluded any mineral rights, but we can't for sure tell you what mineral rights are included. So that would be kind of a separate search through a mineral rights attorney. And
Or
we have
landman.
Right. Yep. And we have referrals for that. So we
Okay.
can get people to the right place, but that is not part of what title insurance covers.
Right. So you mentioned that you don't insure mineral rights. Give us a good perspective of what you insure versus what you don't insure.
Yeah, I think consumers often get a little bit confused about what their title insurance policy covers them for. And the thing they need to remember is that we're talking about the transfer of the property and any documents related to the transfer of the property. So sometimes people will buy a property and they move in and there's a defect with the property itself. Maybe there's a bad sewer line, or they are having an argument with the neighbor over something, right? Those are actually civil issues. That's not something that's covered by the title insurance. So we're just really making sure that they own the property legally and that no one else can come and make a claim that they own or have interest in the property. But as far as any items, the physical items associated with the property or any civil issues or disagreements with neighbors, that is not part of what we do. So I just think it's important for people to understand that and make a distinction.
Or fence lines, like we touched on.
Exactly. Yeah. Your neighbor that's like, my fence has always been here. So those are the things that a survey would tell you in advance. Right. So again, that'd be a good thing to get to make sure. But yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about a 1031 exchange. That would apply to an investor seller that wants to do a tax-deferred exchange to purchase another property. Can you help people with that?
Yeah, so land title does have an exchange division. It's called land title exchange. And so 1031 is just the number associated with the tax code that allows investors to, instead of owning an investment property and selling it and taking an immediate tax liability, it allows them to defer that. So it certainly doesn't remove the tax liability long term. Like they say, there's nothing as certain as death and taxes, so they are going to get you eventually. But the nice thing is you, as an investor, can own an investment property and then sell that and use those funds to buy something else. So land title can help with that. There's some very specific rules regarding timing of that. You cannot take possession of any of those proceeds. The money after the sale goes straight to the exchange company, and they hold those. And you have 45 days to identify some additional properties that you may want to buy. You can do up to 3.
After the sale of the property, you have 45 days?
Correct. And then you have 180 days included in that 45, so a total of 180 days to buy and close on that new property. Or maybe it's 2 properties. So like I said, our exchange company can help with that, and you do want to make sure that you go into that talking to your CPA or accountant and making sure that that is the right choice for you. But it's a very effective investment tool and a way to avoid when you're at a higher tax liability today, and you know that maybe later on in your future, your tax liability will be less, and that's the right time to be taxed on these investments.
Right. And speaking as the realtor, that 1031 exchange needs to be tied into the contract and be a part of that contract up front. So that decision needs to be made pretty early on. You can't get to the closing table and say, oh, I want to do a 1031 exchange, right?
That's correct.
Okay,
Yes.
good.
It's the buyer. It's required to, you disclose that to the buyer, even though it really doesn't affect them in any way. Same on the buyer side. When you're ready to buy as a 1031 investor, letting the seller know that's where your money's coming from is great.
Right. Great. So let's jump into, let's talk about fraud. Is that sexy?
Oh, it's horribly sexy, let me tell you. I think that's what's changed in our industry the most, is the ability for, the bad people in the industry to insert themselves into transactions and to pretend they are real estate agents and title company closers and communicate with consumers and give them bad instructions for money, mostly, right? That's why we do reach out at the beginning of a transaction and talk to buyers and sellers about the red flags to watch for. And then hopefully they will, if they get a call or an email that is asking them to direct their money to a different bank account, or our wiring instructions have changed. Those types of emails or calls would be a big red flag for a consumer. And they should always reach out to their real estate agent if they have not talked to the title company yet. Because so often people get an email and then they call the phone number that came on that email to verify. And that's what goes wrong for them.
Right.
So lots of problems with fraud. And I have some great stories that involve some of the hardest parts of our business, which are the bad things that have happened that really reinforce why title insurance is important, and also how to avoid being a victim of these real estate frauds.
Would you like to share that story?
Yeah,
with
I can.
us?
Yep, I can jump right into that. So one that has been very prevalent in Mesa County is the fake seller. So we have fraudsters that they search for vacant land that is free and clear. It's meaning it does not have a loan against it. So really nobody's paying attention to this property potentially. They create documents and pretend they're that seller and that owner of that property, and they try to sell that to, potential buyer. We had one that we caught early. It did not close because it just parts of it seemed the real estate agent had never talked to the consumer or to the seller in person. It was all via email and text messages. It just didn't feel quite right to any of us. So we sent a copy of the title commitment. We typically deliver those electronically, but we went ahead and used snail mail and mailed a copy of that to the tax address. And sure enough, the real seller came forward and said, no, I'm not selling my lot. It was an $800,000 piece of land. We weren't talking about a small little lot. And so that was a big catch and save. And he was very appreciative that we took that extra step to avoid that. Some other things that buyers wouldn't know to look out for, but that we do, and that title insurance protects them against, the ghost contractor, I like to call him. So you move into a house and there have been all this work done by the seller, and you're excited about that because your property has been updated and a lot of modern conveniences put in. But suddenly you get a notice that a contractor is filing a $20,000 lien because they never got paid for work that they did, whether that be putting on a new roof, painting and installing carpet, whatever that work is. A contractor has a right to file a lien for unpaid work up to 6 months after that work has been completed. So a title company, and part of what we do offer coverage for is, we call it mechanics lien coverage. And that will help protect a buyer against that kind of thing.
But don't you have a seller sign an affidavit at closing that they're not aware of any unpaid work or things that could put a lien on title after closing?
We do. And Shelly, that nobody ever lies.
Right.
Or forgets, or thinks that the issue is resolved and it's not. Or oftentimes you do sometimes have an estate sale, right? So it's the kids selling the property, and maybe there was work that their parent had done to the property, and they passed away, and then it never got taken care of. And so it's not always misleading. Sometimes it's they don't know about it. They don't have that information. So it's just good that that is coverage that's available to consumers so that no matter the reason that it happened, they have a title insurance policy to fall back on for something like that.
Right.
We imagine that you bought a home and moved in, and 2 weeks later you have a sheriff's notice of eviction on your door.
Good one.
Yeah, this one happened again here in Mesa County, and the circumstances were no fault or fraud. It really was a clerical error in a recording document that a lien was not properly identified that it was part of this property. And so the seller panicked, called their real estate agent calls title company. We researched and found that, yes, there was this clerical error, so it did not appear in the standard title search. So while that situation was getting resolved, our underwriter stepped forward and paid that lien off in full. And so it was a win-win for two parties. The lender that loaned that money that did deserve to get paid off, and the buyer that bought that property that was not their loan.
Right.
And so that situation got immediately resolved for them. But imagine how scary that situation would be did you not have title insurance.
Right.
You wouldn't even know how to start, or you'd have to, get attorneys involved to figure that out for you.
Right.
And that can be a significant cost.
That's a great example of your title insurance at work for you.
It's just like any other insurance. You don't need it until you need it. But what is the biggest investment that you might ever have? It's your home.
Right.
And so that's why we just continue to believe that there's value in what we do. And the nice thing is too, it's a one-time premium. So you're not paying it year after year. It's one time, and you have that policy for as long as you own the property.
Okay. There's no further charges.
Nope.
No.
And there's even an escalating clause where as your property increases in value, so does your title insurance policy.
Right.
So that's another positive piece of what we're being conscientious about is increasing your policy over time as the value of your home increases.
Well, Jennifer, you've shared a lot of really good information about title insurance and closings, and we really appreciate your insight into what you do today. Kind of wondering what your prediction is for the future of real estate, title insurance, and closings. What are you seeing? What technology? What is AI going to be a part of this? What's your prediction?
Yeah, I think that, COVID kind of rocketed us forward without even knowing it. That was maybe one good thing that came out of that whole thing was that it did give us the ability to do remote signings, and people can sign from wherever in the world that they are, and they can get notarized without having to be at a U.S. embassy, or a lot of the different restrictions on how we did closings in the past have been removed. And artificial intelligence is certainly a big part of the future of title insurance. It's never going to replace the knowledge base that exists in this industry. There are some incredibly knowledgeable and experienced title examiners that just know how to read and evaluate documents and properties and what to watch for in particular counties and areas. So I think that'll be hard pressed to be replaced. But for consumers, the thing that I'm really excited about is all of the title commitment and some of the documents that are associated with a closing can be very legalese and very complicated to understand. So AI is really bringing the ability for consumers to run documents through them and give them a real life explanation of what does this document mean and what should I be concerned about, or what questions should I ask my real estate agent or the title company. And we already as a title company are using a lot of AI to provide extra services to our consumers. We are able to provide kind of a synopsis of a particular exception in their commitment live, so they don't have to even go out and seek out that resource themselves. They can find it within our commitment. So that service is coming, and it'll happen this year, and I'm really excited about that coming out of Land Title. They're just very progressive in that respect. But I think that's what's going to change our industry the most, is just the ability for consumers to have more knowledge about what they're doing and what the process looks like. And that's certainly going to make for a better experience.
Yeah, I agree. And I think AI is a great tool for research and insight, But of course, we do encourage people to rely on their professionals, the title insurance company and their realtor for the proper direction and advice, of course. But yeah, I agree. AI is going to be a big part of all of this for us. I use it in my business as well.
Yes, even as part of the fun part about title insurance and the searches that we do, right? There's so many documents. It's like a trust agreement that we have to review, or a long power of attorney, or an operating agreement. So we are able to create tools within some of the AI platforms that help us reduce the time it takes to do that. And so it's helping us too, and it provides more consistency and speed in the products we're able to produce. So I think that's, again, the benefit to the consumer. They're going to be able to get the report and the information they need more quickly, and hopefully be able to have resources to understand it better themselves.
Is there anything else you'd like to share with us, Jennifer, about land title or what services you provide?
You know, I think it's just important to remember that real estate is a pretty big deal, and it is a people business. You can get online and you can find a lot of information, and you can look at pictures and videos online of homes, but it doesn't really replace talking to a person and talking to your real estate agent or your lender in person. So when you're selecting your crew of members to help you with this big process, your lender, your real estate agent, your title company, if you choose to select people that are local and in front of you and are contributing back to the community, like the Christi Reece group does with their Circle Fund. Land Title is a huge supporter of so many Colorado nonprofits, and it's just important to select industry partners like that, because we contribute back to the community that they're buying in and wanting to live in. So that just kind of keeps us all focused on the same thing.
Right. I love that.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to the Real Estate Deep Dive segment of the Full Circle podcast. My name is Shelly Cross, and I want to thank Jennifer Brownell with Land Title for joining us today. If you have any questions about the home buying process, feel free to call us here at the Christi Reece Group, or contact Land Title directly for advice on title issues.
Thanks, Shelly.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. This is Christi Reece signing out from the Full Circle podcast.